Thank you very much. Thank you, Sana, for the invitation and introduction. Now I'm very glad to here and to spend some time and to review the social policy development over the past 30 more years in China, and also look a little bit ahead in the near future. So basically, my talk will cover, first I very briefly introduce the whole perspective for me to review the policy development, and when is really is the government's position. Normally, Chinese government to their major policy goal is to try to strike the balance between efficiency, equity. So that's the government's angle. Then another one is academic perspective that has been proposed by Asimov and Robinson in their book, a very famous book called "One Nation Fails," that they argue for to build up inclusive institutions. So I try to review the policy development from the two angles. The second part, I'm trying to review the three phases, 3 years of policy development and reform in China. Then I focus a little bit on the current reform package the government has just proposed at the third plenary session of the 18th Party Congress. So they got a very ambitious reform. So I will focus on those on the social sector and trying to identify so what could be the major barriers for those reforms. Then very briefly at the end I will make some conclusion and raise some questions for further discussion. So first one, in terms of the government's position, the government's angle, there's the balance, the trade-off between the efficiency and the equity, so there's not much to explain. I'll explain a little bit on the academic perspective that has been developed by Asimov and Robinson in their book. They said for a country to be success or to be failed, something, basically this is the element for a country to be success. They need 2 key elements, institution. One is from economic perspective, another one political perspective. So here they mentioned many of them for the inclusive economic institution, like market. There must be a functional market, and also state support to address the market failure. And also like in the free entry, the level playing field, and like the opportunity for the great, for the mass majority, something like this. That's the economic term. Then from the at the political side, he said, for a country to be successful, they need 2 key elements. One is pluralism, and that means that the power has to be widely distributed. That must be check and balance, especially check on the politician. That must be a rule of law. In terms of at the same time, he said there must be a centralization of political power. That means the government must be very strong to regulate the economic activity and also to impose taxes and provide public goods. So bear in mind this the framework developed by them. So let's move to the development phases in China. For the first one, one of the third, I have divided. The first one is actually between really the first 2 decades of the China's opening to outside world and reform. The government has really identified the efficiency as a very single policy goal. They intentionally ignore the equity issues. Because of the legacy of the of the command economy. You know, there's excessive egalitarianism, you know, and also because of the annual rest ball. So the government said that, okay, we got to focus the efficiency would be really a top priority of our development. So intentionally, in a sense, they try to avoid this kind of equity. They treated, at that time, they treated equity like just like this, you know, it's kind of, they think it's a symbol of the command economy. So intentionally, they avoided this. So for the first 2 decades, the government gradually they trying to work hard to gradually remove the barriers to labor mobility. Although you know, in China there's an institution called the hukou, or household registration system. So that although the hukou still there even now, but in terms of its function to eliminate the labor mobility. So the function has been substantially weakening. So gradually, the government do not control the movement of neighbors, you know, just for sake a better economic opportunity. But on the other hand, the government is trying to maintain the competitiveness of the nation economy and also to promote the full employment. So that's just a very brief summary. Let's go a little bit more detail. As mentioned earlier, so in terms of the concept framework defined by the by Acemoglu, you know, and Robertson, you said, you know, the first one, you know, we can face in their concept framework is the opportunity for the great majority. So the government trying to has managed to liberalize the hukou-linked employment policy, not welfare policy, but hukou-related employment policy has been substantially liberalized. And also, there's not the NATO labor protection legislation, especially on the private sector. Actually, the private sector in the command economy, there's NATO private sector, but afterwards, there's more and more private sector. But for those sectors, in the first two decades, there's no such legislation applied to them. And also, even for those very limited legislation, for the local authorities, they enforce them very loosely. So as a result of this, over the past, according to when how to see it can survey over the 10 years in 1990s, there's almost no increase in the average wage of the migrant worker in nominal term, not in, consider the inflation. That means the migrant workers, their salaries purchasing power has been declined. So for all the 10 years. Another consequence is, but there's a substantially increased, rapidly increased in the migrant workers. That's at the beginning of the 1980s, only 2 million migrant workers, but at the end of the last century, almost beginning of this new century, 100 million. That's the one major in terms in terms of the opportunity, that's inclusive economic institutions there, and in terms of level playing field, another kind of institution building, the government trying to de-link. In the past, within the commodity economy, the welfare has been provided by individual enterprises, especially those state-owned and collectively owned enterprises. So that at that time, the welfare provision is kind of a mandatory employer obligation. But gradually, the government has de-linked those obligations from individual employers and to hand them either to the market So then like a housing, so they become most of them have been market based, and some of the benefit have become socially or government state provided, like the pension, medical insurance. So that's the SOE or collective owned enterprise can compete with the private ones. And also, the government has reduced many of those benefits. For example, the medical benefit has been reduced for family dependent. In the past, your dependent children, half of their medical costs can be reimbursed, but afterwards those policies has not been there at all. And also the pension replacement of pension has been reduced from used 70. When you retire, you can get 70% something of your previous salary, but right now it's only 60 or even 40 something. So that for the basic pension, the basic pension rate is only 40, 50 something. Compared to the international, that's still quite high. But compared to the command economy at that time, it's substantially reduced. Then the government also trying hard to explain the coverage of social benefit to non-state sector, to private sector, so that they can have a level playing field. So and also because those labor movements, at the end of this period, according to the World Bank research and together with our working organization on urbanization, this report has just been released recently. The increased mobility of labor force has contributed at least 20% of the China's GDP growth. Over the past 30 years, the Chinese economic growth, annual growth rate is on average is 10%. That means because of labor mobility, the contribution to the Chinese economy is 2%. The 2% of the 10 is because of the labor mobility, and also, as I mentioned, because the wage did not increase, it's very low wage. But on the other hand, they can, for the economy can hire more migrant workers. So, and because of that, so they pay the low wage, but they can hire more people. And because of that, there's more rural household can move to the rural labor force can move to the city to find a job. Then so that more family, more household can get rid of poverty. So that's the logic. But I don't think that's the government's policy design like that. It's just happened by coincidence because they have a very low labor market, very free labor market. So the market, because of the market force, so more and more people, many Chinese, suppose if the government force the enterprise to increase their wages substantially, then they can only hire maybe half the population, migrant worker, then half of the rural household still in absolute poverty. So because of they hire more, already pay less, but compared to they have earned in the countryside, they can own much more. But compared to their counterparts in the city, they own less. But relatively, they own much more than they stay in the countryside. So because of that, many more people to be employed in the city. So that's why in the first 2 decades, 50%, at the beginning of the reform, almost 80 to 90% of rural households are living in absolute poverty, defined by the World Bank. That means $1 per day, something like that. So according to this criteria, right now is only by the end of the last century, it's only 20% or 30% something people, rural people living in absolute poverty. So that's really a huge progress. So that's the first period. Basically, is really the government just doing nothing. It seems economic policy is equivalent to social policy. They just focus on efficiency, not much really social policy. They just reduce the balance for the labor market. But because of that, there's some negative, some positive consequences I just mentioned, but also there's some negative consequences. Although the absolute poverty has been reduced substantially, but on the other hand, not everybody benefit equally from the development. So that's why there's a rapidly increased income inequality. So at this time now, so the government at the beginning of the century, the new leadership and they put great efforts on both efficiency and equity. So then the government realized that the market itself cannot work properly. They need some state intervention, state support. So we will talk about that a bit later, what they have done. Then they're trying to address a widening inequality through they call the shared development through the various aspects. That means not only in terms of income, also in terms of public service, everything. So they're trying to make people share the development fruits. And also at the same time, they still not forget the efficiency. So for the efficiency part, they also means to make the market work, and also means right now the government is trying to facilitate change the development pattern. In the past, the first 20 or 30 years, Chinese economy heavily depend on export and no value added. So the labor force now they said we need to rely more on domestic consumption, so innovation. So that's why. So that's I trying to show you why how to they trying to strike balance between these two over this period of time. So first for the more state investment for human capital development, and also at the same time that's for the efficiency purpose, and also for the social benefit, trying to provide more financial protection for household. So you can see, over this period of time, the government spending on education has been increased from less than 2.6% something to 4% of the GDP, and the public spending, including social insurance, altogether, and the general budget spending altogether is on health increased from at about 30% at the beginning in the early 1980s. Sorry, it's in the year 2000. Then it's around 37%. Then ran to the end of the 2010 is more than at around 55%, something like that. So you can see the government investment has been increased substantially. And also, besides this increased investment, the government has carried on many reforms in both education sector and also in healthcare sector, as mentioned by in the introduction by Senna. And so here I just give you an example of the reform has carried out in health sector. So the government not only have carried out some reform in terms of financing and the delivery of health services, they expand the coverage of health insurance substantially. So that speed, that pace has never seen. We couldn't see, those really precedents, in other countries. It's rarely to see such rapid increase in terms of coverage. And that's new cooperative medical schemes, urban medical insurance for urban citizens, and also many other insurance schemes, social insurance schemes like unemployment and maternity insurance, and also that's insurance. And also in terms of the benefit network, the coverage of service package and the reimbursement rate had to be gradually expanded. And also the government invested a lot in the grassroots level of the health infrastructure. So that's quite that's that's the top priority in a sense. Still at that time, the government want in the human capital development. Then in the second sector, really is the labor market. The government has issued many new legislation, regulations on labor protection. For the first one is the labor covered by the collective, we call the collective contract. In China now, over this period of time, the collective contract law has been issued. So you can see, for those people covered by the collective contract law has been increased substantially, and also even in the middle of the global financial crisis, some new laws on the employment contract or the protection of labor's interests have been issued that provide really a new legislation framework. But why the government, even in the middle of the financial crisis, they issued so many labor legislations? That's because we think that's still that's justified from the efficiency ground and also equity perspective. A monetary turnover of labor is good for scale technology transfer from one company to another. But if there are too high turnover of labor force, it's not good for scale accumulation. If there's too many turnover from there's not stable labor force at all, so it's not good for the labor force to accumulate the scale. So that's why some people think, okay, why is so many Chinese schools that so not so good quality? Because they do not have a scale labor force. So that's why. So we think maybe even for the sake of our economy, it's better have some kind of suitable some kind of level of protection for our neighbors, so that they can have a stable labor force. And of course, it's good for the income distribution. Although those kind of strong labor market institutions, their effect is quite debatable in many factors, in many aspects, such as maybe it's not good for employment, and if you have a very strong, especially have a very rigid institution, maybe you could cause less employment, more unemployment. But international evidence suggests a good, strong labor market institution could be good for for the income distribution. That's the top problem at that time in China, even now, of course. So that's why so many legislation has been issued over this period of time. So not only for the sake of social benefit, also economic benefit. And another major thing is the government has increased its investment. Also, they have issued some new legislation for social protection. That means, since the late 1990s, China has introduced a good number of social protection programs. Also, this pace, this speed is not common internationally. Those social protection programs, including pension, including the medical insurance, I mentioned earlier, and also the national safety net scheme, like the national social assistance scheme. So right now it's covered 70 million people. So it's really quite a comprehensive social protection network is there, social safety net there. So also that has been established in a very short period of time, only in 10 or 20 years time. So normally it's taken like a few decades for OECD country to establish such a system, but for many middle-income countries still have not achieved this. So comparatively, that's something, So why the government has so keen to do this? So again, it's not good for the social protection, but also for the stimulate the domestic consumption. When the people they know they got some protection when in a rainy day, So it's no need for them, individual household, to save more. But right now, Chinese household has saved a lot. If they got some kind of protection, they know they got the protection there. Maybe it's no need for them to save too much. So that's the second phase. The previous leadership focused a lot on the social provision, the policy goals there, and also in terms of the framework of academic perspective, there's so many state support, state intervention to address the market failure. And for the third phase is now, for these terms, this new leadership, they said, okay, probably they got some review of what the previous term of the leadership had done. They said probably we have done too many too soon. So especially in the middle of the financial crisis in the European welfare states, they said, okay, probably we could fall into the same welfare trap, something like that. In a sense, they are justified. When you look at the labor force participation in China, when the labor force turned into their later 50s, the labor force participation rate will drop dramatically. That's much lower in terms of our older worker, our older labor force is much less work, continue their work compared to even OECD country, compared to our many other middle-income countries. So that's really caused some concern. And also because the economy has slowed down, the public finance, the increase of the public finance has been slowed down. The government concerned whether or not it's affordable for such a big comprehensive welfare provision. So then it's trying to retreat a little bit. So for the long-term sake of our economy, and also in terms of for the social benefit, whether or not it's a good idea, just give people some social benefit. Why don't we encourage them to involve more, to become more active, to support themselves? We're trying to empower themselves. So that's the logic here. So the government said, okay, I'm going to select something, I'm going to prioritize something rather than do everything equally. So they said, okay, first of all, I ensure the minimum things, like a minimum wage, a minimum living standard. I will ensure the delivery of this. Then I'm trying to, within the remaining social benefits, there's two kinds of benefits. One, by nature, is kind of investment. That social spending is kind of investment. What does that mean? That means you spend money on that, you could get some return back. And also, there's another kind of social benefit is consumption. So for this is education, healthcare, and also something else. I'll come back later. And also for social consumption, that could mean pension. They said pension, when spend money, there's not much return. So they're trying to expand social investment and contain social consumption. Why I got question mark? So the government has not seen that very clearly, but from the wording they have used, you can tell there's logic there. And also, at the same time, they're trying to restructure and strengthen the state governance. They said we got some kind of social dialogue since they are going to cut down some benefit, contain some benefit. So and to do some, in the past they only just expand everything. Everybody is happy, but now they want to reallocate the resources, shift from one area to another. So they said, okay, we need some kind of social dialogue. Then to carry out this, we need more transparency. We need more participation. So you can see, so that's the things. And basically you can see the change there in the government policies, goals or philosophy. So they try and treat the citizens in the past, they treat them as a passive beneficiary. Now they assume, okay, they are not just a passive beneficiary. Now they should be active participant, and they should be the master or something, And then also they shift the focus of the equality from outcome. They try and focus more on opportunity. So let's look at them in more detail. Especially those part on the government put more emphasis on social investment. For social investment, first of all, they try to unleash, the government trying to unleash the existing labor force potential. In recent years, over the past few years, the total labor force in China has been increased every year. But in most recent years, this labor force, the total number of labor force has started to increase. Actually, in 1 year's time, it began to decline in terms of total number of labor force. So that's why some scholars argue there's no more population bonus. So, but on the other hand, our old labor force I have just mentioned, they retire from they withdraw from labor markets very early. So how to make the best use of those existing labor force? So that's why the government said, okay, I'm going to for those existing old one, maybe they got the family obligation. So that's why the government said, okay, I will establish the elderly care, long-term care for older people, and also to develop to build more facilities for child care, so that it can release, some, especially women's family obligation to encourage them to involve more in the labor market. So that's the one logic. Of course, this also is good for they got the social implication. It's not good, but also the government to do this is from the sake of the economic sense. It makes some economic sense. The second thing the government do is trying to empower the future's labor force. They trying to improve the quality of future worker, so that China can maintain a robust productivities growth in the face of decline labor force. In the future, quite soon, we are going to have in terms of total number of labor force is a decline. So then the government said, okay, we are going to carry out the further reform in education and health care. So we'll come to a little bit more later on this further reform. And also, the government argue for the modernization of the state governance. In China, we got on our modernization agenda, we got 4 modernization already. So now the government proposed one more. That's one. It's called modernization of the structure and capacity of state governance. The key elements for this, the government argued for the broad participation, transparency. They try to show to the citizen, okay, look, I got a very tight budget. That's exactly what I can do. They're trying to bring the stakeholder to the discussion table, to get the understanding. At the same time, the government said, okay, I need some centralized control to meet some resistance, and need some centralized finance benefit. There's such big gap across regions, across different groups in China. They said, okay, although the government, I have mentioned so many welfare provisions, but almost all of them are delivered or mainly financed by the local authority. The government said, okay, that cannot last for any longer. For United country, we need really some political, we need some centrally controlled finance, centrally delivered, centrally defined benefit. So on the one hand, more talk, more participation, more transparency. On the other hand, yeah. So so at the central level, there's more central financed, and also national administrative like pension. And there's education, more centrally financed, healthcare, more centrally financed. At the local level, there's many initiatives by local authority. They're trying to encourage citizens' participation, especially in those areas, affairs closely related to the daily life of ordinary household. They're trying to change, tone those criticism into understanding and even contribution. You know, if you do not bring in the policy process, maybe they quite often they criticize. But if you show your difficulty, your limit, your constraint to your stakeholder, at least they could understand you. And they even become more participant or contribute to more active or become a positive force for the policy making and policy implementation. So that's the logic. So that's why the government argued, so it's time to carry out some kind of reform in the from the political perspective through really the social policy. So that's really closely linked to the people's daily life. So I come back a little more on the further reform in the top priority has defined by the current leadership. One is the further reform in the education sector, another is on the healthcare sector. For the education sector, there's four key concrete measures the central government has defined. One, there would be no K schools and classes for compulsory education. What's the major measures? The major measure the government is trying to establish a lottery system to move teachers around across schools and across regions. So that means, take Beijing example. Haidian is very good at normally almost all their schools, public school, in China, public school is dominate the schooling system. In Haidian district, compared to other districts, they are much higher. In the quality of teachers, much good. So everybody want to go to Haidian. But right now, if you want to send your kids to the good school, K school, in China we got school at four levels. We got provincial K school, municipal K school, district K school, and also ordinary K school. All of them are public school. So if you want to go really provincial K school, either you are really smart. Not only smart, you are ready, your parents is willing to send you to some actual after school class. So really, so that's why the kids got no free time to play. And also, so that's the one group of people, smart people plus the parents are willing to send you to actual class after school. The second group is really those people got well connected with the principals. You know the head teachers pretty well. You can pay a lot of money. You can get access to that. So we think it's not good for social mobility. In terms of inequality, we not only focus on income, the asset inequality become even more serious. And also public service, there's a disparity here. We think it's not good for mobility. So that's why the government said, okay, we are going to tackle the opportunity first. So that's why the first, so in the future, so that's no more K school. We will move teacher around every individual school. So the teacher almost the same. So why should I choose? Why should I send the kids to the K school? So there's no more to a specific school. The second reform, they're going to reform the current recruit system for the K senior high school, the 高中, 重点高中, okay? They said, okay, for the K senior high school, right now, they recruit their students from a single pool of the students in the whole cities. So for the junior high school student, when they want to go to the senior high school, they need to take an examination. Afterwards, it's up to the top senior high school to choose first. So from the big pool. But now the government said, no, you cannot choose from a big pool. You can only choose the small, every individual pool, every individual junior high school. So that means, what's the point for me, in future? Why I should send my kids to the top junior high school? Maybe he's a tail of chicken in that school. If I send the children to a weak school, junior high school, he could be a phonetics, the head of phonetics. So it's good for for the system to be equal. So that's the second policy. The third one is the migrant children. If they stay in Beijing for so many years, they can take a national examination for university entrance from Beijing. So that's the third policy. The last one. So besides the national entry examination, for those families, disadvantaged families in poor region, they got extra channel for them to get into the top university. In China, to get into university is not a problem at all. It's equal, regardless of your family background. From poorest to rich, almost identical in terms to go to university. But in terms, if you compare the student background in the top university, it's totally different. It's much less likely for the poor family students, get into the top university. So that's why the government said, okay, besides the normal competition, the big competition, I will open another channel for those poor families. So they said, okay, in 2012, there's 10,000 posts. Last year is 30, then this year 50,000 for the top university, Peking University, Tsinghua, so on and so forth, 100 something. So that's for education. Another one is for healthcare. The healthcare, that's the major one. I think is crucial one. Is the government said, okay, we are going to establish a salary system for professionals in the healthcare sector. So why is so crucial? But right now, Chinese doctor, by the official defined wage scale, they should be very low. There's no different from other professionals. But in practice, they earn much higher than official defined wage scale. They got a huge amount bonus. They even exclude the kickback from the pharmaceutical company. But they can get a huge amount of bonus from their individual provider or hospitals. So besides the government defined wage, so that's basic wage, they got a huge amount of bonus. So that could be as high as 3 times, 4 times their basic salary. So that means the more they prescribe, the more profits they created for their hospital. Then they can get more bonus. So we think that's not good. It's not sustainable. So that's why, although we got a medical insurance scheme, but still we got an affordability problem because the doctors still want to prescribe more. We think most expensive things in the health system is the doctor's pen. Not the advanced facility. The doctor, for every individual, the prescription they prescribe more. That's huge amount of money. So we trying to give a right incentive to doctor. Right now it's quite negative. We think it's not good. It's not sustainable. So it looks perfect, It's so promising. That's the reform package. But there's so many barriers for the new strategy, new reform package. First, really a strong resistance from West interest. Like, when the government decided to open the national entry examination for migrant worker children, the Shanghaiese people to extent established what they call the Defending Shanghai Alliance. They said, we do not want them to participate in Shanghai. They cannot compete with all children. So they defined the civil society group. In Beijing, both groups fighting each other in the office of the education authority. And in Guangzhou, when the government tried to change the recruit system from what I said is a single poll to the individual school poll for the senior high school, 30,000 parents signed opposing letter against this policy. They said, no, you cannot do that. Then eventually the government retreat. They said, okay, I won't enforce the policy in 3 years' time. Actually, their process will be much delayed than the central government guidelines. So because of the strong opposition, so then the government the local authority retreat substantially. So it seems the central government can do nothing. So that's the second policy. They also meet a strong resistance. And as I said, okay, if for another policy, you said, okay, in the future, the no more K-school, the teacher will be allocated on a random basis. Then the teacher said, okay, then I will lose my feature. So they said they want to maintain the feature. So that's the argument. And also for the doctors, right now they got so much a big gap between the current national wage rate and also actual income for medical professionals. But if you raise the medical professionals' wage substantially, because of legacy, we got the same wage scale for all professionals. Why other professionals will argue, why the doctor, not me, like teachers? So, and also, there's a big gap among those individual providers and regions. And also, right now, their pay is heavily dependent on their performance in the sense of prescription. So, what other criteria should be used for the salary? So that's a big challenge, technically and also politically. So in general, so push through the overall reform package. So to really push through those, you know, a leadership had to be established. Leadership group had to be established. The chairman would be, you know, really the #1 politician in China, very high ranking. And also they got a special task force for social sector reform. So they seems the government trying to really strictly enforce all this reform. So, but should we be pessimistic or optimistic? You know, as Mokolo and Robinson argued, you know, established an inclusive institution would now be a natural process. They actually said that only one, especially within our authoritarianism context, only one is failed a choice of life and death. They can make such change. But I think maybe, so that's why they were so pessimistic about China, about the future of China. They think, you know, Western interests are so strong. So the current economic development model cannot last longer, and also got so many social challenges, political challenges there. So they are very pessimistic. But maybe they have underestimated, I think, the determination of the capacity of Chinese leaders to push through a new round of reform. Like, you know, exactly like Deng Xiaoping, you know, he had done really those quite successfully. Maybe if you have observed the change over the past 1 year, you know, the current leadership now is consolidated its power. Somebody even argue, you know, I wouldn't see it's right or wrong, you know, they said, you know, the current leader trying to establish some kind of semi-presidency system in China. Right now, you know, the top leadership in China, we got 7 persons in charge. Every person in charge, they are individual lines. So it's kind of, we think it's not good, really. It's very difficult, even for some, even not easy for the Secretary General of the party to coordinate the 7 lines. So right now, it seems that now we are moved to a kind of semi-presidency system. So that in future, we could have only 1 person in charge on the top, something like that. So within the consolidated power of the current leadership and the accumulated social consensus, so because of this governance, we bring more stakeholders to have some constructive social dialogue. Like, you know, as I mentioned, the both group fighting each other in front of the Beijing education municipal, we could set up platform for them, formula for them, for both sides to put their evidence, their arguments there, you know. So maybe within those inquiries, well, I think I'm pretty optimistic, you know, the leadership could be able to conquer on this strong resistance for the Western interests. But in general, I think trying to make some really a conclusion, you know, it seems in China there's some kind of emerging logic from our the development in China. we start from some kind of economic rights. We're trying to get more people participate, to more to take away these barriers for them to participate in the labor market. So we start with the economic rights, inclusion, then move to social rights, social provision, eventually to those political rights. In terms of political rights, we start with governance. That means more transparency, more participation. So I think in terms of advanced democracy, there's two types, two lines of democracy. Like that in Hong Kong, right now they do not have the general election, but they got a wide governance, wide representative of the civil society in their policy making and policy implementation. But on the other hand, in other many developing countries, they got a general election, but the citizens' participation is not so good, you know. So, but China, maybe we start from those kind of governance, participation, and transparency. And also, it seems there's increasingly growing clear policy direction, but there's really the barriers there. There's really a long list of unfinished business there. You know, it's to deal with, you know, really a huge challenge there. And this challenge from many aspects, like the economic transition, like the demographic transition, the urbanization, the aging, and also political transition, the governance and the modernization of state power. We're trying right now. It seems, you know, the Chinese government is very strong, but ironically, actually, the government is very weak. We do not know how many people are born, how many people died, where they have more, what's the income of individual household, what's the assets of individual household. So not like the United States. The government even knows everything about the individual household. So, you know, but on the other hand, in terms of the despotic power is very weak. But in China, maybe their despotic power is very strong, but their infrastructural power is very weak. So we try that's what we mean by modernization. We're trying to maybe to weaken our despotic power of the government. We're trying to build up the infrastructure power. We're trying to, you know, so that's something, you know, that's challenging, really big there. So in a sense, really a special social, economic, and political experiment in China right now. It's really huge, it's fascinating, you know, it's not so common in the human history. You know, normally such things takes many decades, a few centuries for industrialized country, but in China it's taken, you know, just a few decades. So really challenging but exciting. So I know many of them are students. So you got a really broad field, very interesting field to study and work with. Thank you.